Thank you very much, Professor Desai. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and greetings from Islamabad, Pakistan. As always, it's a pleasure to be hosted by the Friends of Socialist China and the International Manifesto Group, and especially by my dear friend and comrade, I would say, Keith Bennett, and of course, Carlos, whom I had the privilege of meeting 2 weeks ago in Beijing at the Third Belt and Road Forum. So I appreciate what they are doing. And I think in this battle of narratives, the battle of ideas, they're playing a very important role based in London and other parts of the West. Ladies and gentlemen, it seems that we are really at a very key inflection point when we discuss the scenario of a multipolar world and the role of the Belt and Road Initiative. We already are seeing an inexorable and probably irreversible shift in the global balance of economic and political and even cultural power away from the West to the East. The emergence of what many are proclaiming to be the Asian century and the peaceful rise of China, which has its own consequences. As President Xi Jinping rightly said, that we are witnessing once in a century changes that have not been seen before in the last 100 years. And even Western statesmen concur to an extent with that statement, because I remember reading an article by Chancellor Olaf Scholz of Germany when he said that we are witnessing epochal tectonic change in the world. And what President Macron told the French ambassadors last August in Paris, that, and I quote, 300 years of Western hegemony is coming to an end. And I think that is the key element, which was also alluded to by two of the earlier speakers, which I'd like to quote. Professor Zhang Wei mentioned that how China has shed its dependency on the West and how they are trying to reform the international order, which was once totally dominated by the United States and the West, whether it was the economic system or the political system, what they used to call or still call the so-called rules-based international order, which they have been willfully violating as and when necessary to promote their parochial interests. And what Professor Radhika Desai also mentioned, I think, and that was also important, that, and I would like to also mention that the world faces stark choices. I think that is a key thing, that the BRI is coming in the context of the stark choices that the world faces. And one of the choices has already been exercised by Western countries and the United States, to which he referred to with, I think, a lot of passion and commitment, namely the Gaza genocide. Because after the Holocaust and World War II, I think we are witnessing for the first time a systematic slaughter of ethnic cleansing, or almost trying to wipe out an entire community by a state using its military force, with the full endorsement, concurrence, and backing of the self-styled champions of human rights and democracy, namely the United States of America, as well as its allies in Europe and other parts of the West, including particularly Britain. So I think this is quite shameful, and it's quite disgraceful, and it's also represents the worst kind of hypocrisy and double standards we have seen in recent times. And this is bringing about a very clear cleavage between the global South and the global North. And I think when Professor Desai referred to stark choices, the choices are apparent in two very clear statistics that I'd like to briefly present. 10 years of the Belt and Road Initiative has shown $1 trillion of investment in 3,000 projects, and with more countries signing in, because I also happened to be in Beijing for the first Belt and Road Forum in 2017, then the second one in 2019, then after COVID, the first one, which was held recently. And I've seen a greater representation and more enthusiasm among countries which are now part of that. So I think that that is one aspect: China's focus on economic development, China's focus on connectivity, China's focus on respect for diversity, equality of relationships, and inclusivity, as opposed to the United States, within the last 20 years, especially after 9/11, spent a whopping $6 trillion in the so-called war on terror. And these are the figures of the Brown University, by the way. These are not mine. The Brown University in Rhode Island has given these figures about this cost of war study, and this have documented it, which led to 1 million deaths in most of what is the Middle East or the Muslim world, and 30 million people being displaced, and raining in of 324,000 bombs, drones, and missiles on different countries in that period. So I think it came at a very big human toll. And right next to Pakistan is Afghanistan, which spent $2.2 trillion in the war, which meant that $100 million a day for 20 years in Afghanistan for this war. And you can see the result of that. Coming to the BRI, I think that there's no doubt this is probably the most important developmental and diplomatic initiative of the 21st century, both in terms of scope, size, and speed, and the kind of projects they have indicated. And for me, as a Pakistani, I'm very proud of the fact that Pakistan is a neighbor of China. And China came to Pakistan, as Jinjing rightly said, at a time when no other country was willing to come in. 10 years ago, there was a lot of conflict. The Americans were in Afghanistan. There was a lot of terrorism in our region, country as well. The situation was very volatile. And the Chinese leadership, Xi Jinping personally, and the Communist Party of China, they invested, gave a vote of confidence to the people of Pakistan for the economic future. And $26 billion of investment, 250,000 jobs being generated, 8,000 megawatts of electricity in the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC, which is one of the pivots and the flagship of the Belt and Road Initiative, including the building of the Gwadar port. And also it has led to changes in the lives of local communities. And I'd just like to mention one aspect of the success story of CPEC and BRI in Pakistan. There's an area called the Thar area, which is a desert close to, in southern province of Sindh, close to the Rajasthan province of India. And that is one region where it has been very less developed. And it's one region where there is a non-Muslim majority, in fact, Hindu population, Pakistanis are a majority. And for the first time, it has led to women empowerment. The women who are living in thatched houses for decades, they are now driving dumper trucks. They are playing a role in the coal mining project, which is mining coal, which is generating electricity, and the electricity is going to the national grid. So these are areas, and similarly, Gwadar Port in Balochistan has brought about transformative change with the University of Gwadar, the Gwadar Institute of Vocational Training and Technology, and the Pak China Friendship Hospital. So these are a host of a number of initiatives that have made a difference in the quality of life of the people at the grassroots level. I think that's what BRI is all about, people-centric development. And in this context, I feel that the best of BRI and the best of CPEC is yet to come, because CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, is a 15-year project started in 2015 till 2030. And now our Prime Minister was recently also in the Belt and Road Forum, and new agreements have been signed for upgradation of our railway system, and also developing other areas, especially in agriculture, in IT, in education, and exchange of students. And 28,000 Pakistani students are now studying in China. One thing I'd like to just mention also in this context, when we talk of, and I mentioned during my speeches when I met the Chinese leadership also, and a number of fora which I attended, including the one on people-to-people connectivity, and the other one on media, that the main challenge which is coming to BRI from outside is that of demonization, fake news, information warfare generation from outside, primarily sponsored by the United States. And they really want to sort of, and already these things have been mentioned before, but this was very clearly evident. And this challenge has to be met quite clearly, because issues like Xinjiang or South China Sea or Hong Kong or Tibet, they are being used as weapons in the range of information warfare against China by the United States. And I also happened to be in Xinjiang in September and had meetings with different leadership there in Urumqi, in Kashgar, and Yarkand, and even went close to the Pakistani border on the Chinese side, and where you could see trucks moving around and a lot of activity. And I've been to Xinjiang about 20 times in the last 10 years, and I've seen this change also of stabler Xinjiang, more prosperous Xinjiang, people quite relaxed also, I think, so that they've crossed that initial hump where I think some of the security issues were created from outside China by people trying to play the card of separatism and ethnic fault lines. And it reminded me of an article I'd seen a long time ago in the New York Times, which New York Times article by Leslie Gelb. And he said, and the title of the article was, "It's amazing, Professor, you live in the West also." And very crudely it said, "Breaking China apart." This was that if China does not fall in line, so to speak, they said that we can use the kindling of separatism as a card to, so, you know, it's no accident that when you have these fault lines being exploited, we know where they're coming from, whether it's Xinjiang or Hong Kong or Tibet. And I think in that context, it is extremely important. I feel that given this context, the United States, and I've been going to the US also because I studied in Georgetown University in Washington, and there were conferences there last year also. And I told them, told the Americans, I said, you guys have missed the bus. China is now far ahead. You cannot try to contain or even compete with China, frankly speaking. And I quoted a study, I quoted the scriptures, so to speak, the recent study by Professor Graham Hellison in Harvard University. It's called the Great Tech War, China versus the United States. 52 pages. It's also on the internet. You can Google it. And it says very clearly that, and I quote, China is overtaking the United States in high-tech manufacturing, robotics, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, 5G. And Professor Zhang Weiwei showed his latest Huawei ProMate. So it's very clear. The final thing I like to say is that what Eric said is very clear. Then he said that, and I quote, he said, please do better to the United States and other when you want to compete with the Belt and Road Initiative. Ironically, Professor Desai, you know that they criticize the BRI, they attack the BRI, but then they also launched copycat projects of the BRI. Look at the copycat projects in the last few years. The B3W Build Back Better World, which Biden announced with a lot of fanfare in March 2021 in Edinburgh at the G8, G7 summit. Then after a year, nothing happened. They didn't change the name for Program for Global Infrastructure and Investment, PGII. Not to be left behind, the European Union came with its own plan of a copycat project of BRI, Global Gateway. And recently at the G20 summit in Delhi, hosted by India, they came out with another plan, IMEC, India, Middle East, European Union Economic Corridor or whatever, including Israel. But that IMEC now is buried under the debris of the Gaza bombings and genocide that has taken place. So basically the US wants to play catch up, but it can't. So we are looking at a world where there is a transformation and turbulence also. And as President Xi Jinping said, that we are on the right side of history during his speech at the Belt and Road Forum. And I think that is the crux, that the world is changing, the power structure is changing, and Asian countries, global public opinion, and the Gaza genocide, including I would say the Ukraine war and the new Cold War with the Americans are trying to ignite against China, they've all brought about a new fault line, bringing the global South together against what is the global North. And I think that shows, and in that China is playing a leadership role on issues, whether it was during the pandemic, or whether it's climate change. And I feel that hopefully some sanity would prevail in the United States. But the United States system, political system, is now so much captive to Western interests and the election cycle that they have limited vision to see a new world that is emerging out there. I thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure and delight, and always to listen to Professor Radhika Desai and Zhang Weiwei and other friends who have just come, and Mr. Marandi from Iran, which is a brotherly country of Pakistan. And we have always opposed sanctions against other countries because we were once also sanctioned in the past, but we managed to beat the sanctions. Thank you so much.